Welcome to your key discovery point. I am Brett Burney from Nextpoint, joined by Doug Austin of eDiscovery today. Doug, a couple of weeks ago, I had the distinct honor of being on a webinar with you and Kelly Twigger that was hosted by EDRM, Hyperlinked Files Revisited, or Revisiting Hyperlinked Files. What has changed? What's new? What's still a hot mess? Well, one of the cases that we briefly discussed, or Kelly brought up, was Young v. Salesforce, which is a very short decision that came out at the very end of June. And the case, it looks like it's a class action case. Quickly, you can go into some detail. The plaintiffs were seeking some source code about how the Salesforce chat tool worked on that can be embedded in certain websites. And I think they mentioned like Rite Aid and something else here. But the judge said that Salesforce doesn't have to provide or produce the source code. But interestingly, in one little crazy fell swoop sentence here, that Salesforce had to disclose all relevant chat-related hyperlinked material about the functionality and architecture of the chat tool. I guess the word that I hung up here on, and I think you did too, is all relevant chat-related hyperlinked material. That's a little crazy, but a little bit of a different bent here to the hyperlinked files growing body of law in the e-discovery world, Doug.
Yeah, first of all, hat tip to Kelly for finding this case and talking about it
Yes.
on the webinar that we all three did together, which you're showing there, and you can still
Yep.
go watch it on demand. It's like you mentioned, it's a very short case, and it's almost kind of like a little bit of an opposite day kind of case ruling. I've covered plenty of cases where the party's been ordered to produce source code if it's relevant to the
Okay.
case under a protective order, because of course it's IP generally.
Right.
But
Right.
in this case, Judge Beeler found that that was that it wasn't really proportionate to produce the source code. And she basically said, "Hey, the depositions are documents and proposed depositions give less burdensome alternatives to understanding chat's functionality, and so forth." So, she said no on producing source code, but then in essentially two sentences, she said, "Hey, but hyperlinked documents, they don't need to produce publicly available material, but all relevant chat-related hyperlinked material about functionality and architecture." It's notable because we've been talking mostly in most of our cases about producing hyperlinked documents in M365 or in Google Workspace as
Right.
the two primary sources. And I expected at some point we were going to start seeing some other platforms where hyperlinked documents were at issue. I didn't think
Right.
Salesforce was going to be one of the first ones, but there it is. I mean, Salesforce has a
There it
chat function.
is.
And, if they've got the chat function and they've got hyperlinked documents from it, it's, basically a solution that the judge is saying, must be produced. Now, I'll be interested to see if this case, if there's more on this ruling, because there's no analysis here whatsoever on
Right.
proportionality, where she found source code was not proportionate. She did no analysis on the hyperlinked documents, which of course we've seen plenty of proportionality analyses on hyperlinked documents in other cases. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a subsequent ruling where Salesforce is basically fighting back to say it's not proportional. But we'll see. I don't know what the volume is or anything like that. But it is
Yeah.
certainly notable that This is a case where the court not only said, yes, you've got to produce the hyperlinked documents, but it's from an enterprise solution that's not M365 or Google Workspace. And this illustrates how pretty much any enterprise solution, cloud-based solution that has links to hyperlinked files could essentially be a case involving hyperlinked documents.
Yeah, that's one of my first questions is where are these documents being stored? I mean, Salesforce is obviously a very huge and well-known software as a service, cloud-based tool that's been around for a long, long time. I know that they have their own storage capacity. But to your point, it's like not the same as maybe a Dropbox or OneDrive on the back end or Google Drive or something like that that we also discuss on there. And another technicality that I always kind of wish was included in some of these rulings. I feel like there's two ways I can come about this. Is it hyperlinked files in the actual chat tool, because this is a chat tool that typically is embedded in like a big website, and so you're chatting with maybe Rite Aid or Kaiser, I think was another company that was talking about
Right.
here. So that individuals chatting with those companies, it's through a Salesforce tool. Are you keeping some of the information? Where is that? So is it linked files in the chat, or the way that it's worded here, Doug, it says Salesforce must disclose all relevant chat-related hyperlinked material about functionality and architecture. And so then I'm thinking, does that mean internally within Salesforce, if they're talking about how the chat function works, the functionality and the architecture, and they're linking to file stores somewhere? I don't know, and neither of us have insight into this case is exactly what they're asking for. But I just always I always get a little disappointed because I want more of those technical questions answered that I always have, Doug. But as you said, maybe we'll be looking in the future for some additional rulings, because again, you just pointed out before we just hit record that certainly Salesforce may have something to say about this, regardless of which way it is that they have to collect from these files. Is this burdensome on them to go and collect some of this? We've seen some of those arguments before in other cases too.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I certainly would expect here. Yeah, I agree with you, Brett, that the language here doesn't make it entirely clear where these hyperlinked documents are located.
Right.
So it seems, it's relevant chat-related hyperlinked material could be interpreted as material in other platforms about the chat, not necessarily from Salesforce chat. But certainly you would think that since Salesforce has a chat tool and it provides the ability to hyperlink to documents, that some of it would likely be potentially from the Salesforce chat app itself. So
Right.
that's one of the
Right.
things I think you're going to see. Slack, Teams, you name it, any platform you can communicate from and send a link to a file with. I think is potentially going to have discoverable hyperlinked documents as a result.
And then just again on that burdensome argument, you even mentioned at the very bottom of your post, is it crazy that the court ordered disclosure of all chat-related relevant hyperlinked material? That is a very big swath right there too, Doug.
Potentially. Again, we don't know, the size or have a sense of that,
Right.
but
Right.
certainly, she did limit it to relevant. So, it's a case
Okay.
where, what does that mean? I don't know.
Right.
But
Right.
again, it does certainly where, I've had some people say, oh, the courts have decided that, you don't have to treat hyperlinked files like attachments and produce them with a message. And whether you treat them as attachments or not, I do think it's in context to produce them with the message. And I think we're still seeing rulings in both areas. And obviously, this is a ruling where it certainly seems as though they're saying you have to produce it with the message.
Well, you mentioned our EDRM webinar that you and I and Kelly did, revisiting hyperlinked files, what's changed, what's new, and what's still a hot mess. I think I would put this case under the hot mess category. Uh, and Kelly did mention this case just in passing because we mentioned several cases about the things that had changed and everything. But as you mentioned, Doug, it is still available for on-demand viewing. We'll make sure the link is in the show notes here so you can go and register for that. And this is A year prior to this, we did the first one we called the modern attachments. Even that has changed over this last year, but a good, I guess, even a primer on hyperlink files in general, and then also what has changed over the last year. We'll make sure that we have the show note in there as well. Your key discovery point today, I don't know that I can resist, Doug. I'd like to say, may the Salesforce be with your hyperlinked files going forward. We'll talk with you
Hey,
next time.
the puns are my territory.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
that's it. That's a good one, Brett. Yes,
Okay. Thank you.
indeed.
Thank you very much. Talk with you next time, Doug. Thanks as
All right.
always.
Thanks, Brett. Thanks, everybody.